What is up, everybody? This is your boy, Teran Rodriguez, bringing you another edition of Set Point. And as always, we have ourselves a jam-packed show as we have a lot to get into in the world of volleyball. As there was only one upset in the NCAA women's volleyball world, but it was a big one as Xavier, yes, the Musketeers, taken down Creighton at home for the first time in its program's career. Oh, what a big win for that team. There are also some other notable wins as well, as USC picking up a huge win against UCLA. UC Santa Barbara started 2-0, which included beating Long Beach State at Long Beach State. Also, I got to see UC Davis in some big West Conference action. Also, we had a couple of attendance records being broken. And how about Mater Dei? Yes, the Monarchs in girls volleyball, winning the Durango Classic, beating Mira Costa in the final. Impressive stuff. And the U.S. men's national team won gold in the Final Six Pan Am NORCECA tournament. And the U.S. women's national team qualified for the 2024 Paris Olympics. So hand me a volleyball, set up the net, because I'm about to serve you up some volleyball action here on Set Point. This is Teran Rodriguez bringing you another edition of Set Point here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. And welcome one, welcome all to another edition of Set Point. Thank you all for joining me on this beautiful Monday afternoon, Monday evening, Monday wherever you are listening from. Either way, you have made your way into episode 213 of Set Point. Without any further delay, let's get started. But first and foremost, Set Point would not be where it's at without IE Sports Radio providing the platform to go live on Spreaker. Please do follow IE Sports Radio on formerly known as Twitter, X, TikTok, and Instagram at IE Sports Radio. We also have a Facebook page for those that still use Facebook. All you just have to do is type in the word IE, then sports, then radio in the search bar, and then boom, that's how you're able to follow us. All you just have to do is like us, and that's how you're able to get all your IE Sports Radio sports news. We also have a website, www.iesportsradio.com, for all the latest sports news, our blog, our Hall of Fame, our Fans of the Month, our page is dedicated to each podcast, our community forum, and our merchandise shop. And for the last 9 years, IE Sports Radio has been bringing you amazing content ranging from interviewing legendary athletes, coaches, and other authorized media personnel to building tailor-made shows dedicated to all major sports days around the country. Thank you to everyone for all of your support and for making IE Sports Radio your direct feed for all that sports. Shout out to our sponsor, Planet Jerky Premium Brisket Beef Jerky. Planet Jerky is the official jerky of the 2022 California League champion Lake Elsinore Storm, the single-A affiliate of the San Diego Padres. This all-brisket jerky has gluten-free options, contains no MSG, no sodium nitrate, it's low in sugar, and high in protein. This is some of the best jerky you can get your hands on, and all you have to do is visit www.planetjerky.net and place your order. Follow Planet Jerky on Instagram at Planet Jerky. Once again, huge shout out to our sponsor, Planet Jerky, Premium Brisket Beef Jerky, the jerky that's on a whole other planet. And you can follow me, Teran Rodriguez, on Twitter at Teran Rodriguez1. You probably don't want to do that just because, well, I don't really post the most volleyball content on there. I mean, I post a lot of potpourri when it comes to a lot of stuff, but that's my main Twitter account. For all things volleyball, you can follow me on X/Twitter, or you can follow Set Point on X/Twitter at set_point.ie for all the interviews and coverage of volleyball matches. And you could also follow Set Point on Instagram at set_point.iesr, where you will see all the interviews and the highlight reels. I plan to put a montage of the UC Davis, UC Irvine highlights that I managed to get. I wish I'd gotten all of them because I feel there were a couple of highlights I might have missed, but I digress. All right, with all that said and done, let us begin, as we have a lot to get into, as there were quite a bit of notable volleyball matches to go over. So there weren't too many upsets. There was only one true upset, but let's go over that. As Mikey Two Guns, the host of IE Sports Radio's Boston show, Our Bleepin' City, says, "Hey, buddy." Hey, Mikey, how you doing, buddy? All right, so the first notable match we had from week number 5 was USC versus UCLA. Let's jump to Wednesday. So USC defeated UCLA in 5 sets. Now, this was actually in the later cap games. This was the Pac-12 opener for both the Bruins and the Trojans, or the Women of Troy, to be more specific. USC was coming off of 2 good wins over Illinois and Purdue, while UCLA was coming off of a split against Oklahoma. And USC had the tall task of beating UCLA on the road, and UCLA has some stud players. They've got Anna Dodson, they've got Carly Hendrickson, they've got Iman Njai, they've got Sheridan Leverett, they got Desiree Becker, they got Peyton Dueck. They've got a stacked lineup. But USC, led by London Widjay, I think it's Widjay, because I misspelt her name on X, which I totally apologize. Stupid autocorrect. But London Widjay, remember the name, because you have to remember, she forewent her senior year of high school at Alemany and graduated early, and now is a stud freshman at USC. And she is helping take the load off of Skylar Fields. And USC, like I said, has unlocked that new weapon, and that really helps the Trojans. How far can she take USC this season is beyond me, but I feel with her and Skylar Fields leading the way, that makes USC a much better team than it was in the early stages of preseason, because the entire preseason was just bank on Skylar Fields, bank on Skylar Fields, bank on Skylar Fields, which is not the way to go. So I think USC is looking really good. UCLA, unfortunately, that was a heartbreaker. They missed a lot of serves, and you can't do that when it comes to a matchup against your rival, especially when it comes to like 2 evenly matched teams. Unfortunately for UCLA, they also followed that up with a 3-set loss to Oregon, which obviously we know Oregon is good. I did not expect a sweep, but I also didn't expect UCLA to basically drop a heartbreaker because of missed serves and whatnot. So it's still early in the Pac-12 season, but UCLA just can't afford too many of these not-so-good losses. Also on Wednesday, there were some notable matches. We had number 10 BYU sweeping Houston in the battle of the Big 12 debuts, as BYU swept Houston on national television. They played on ESPN2, and the match before that was actually number 14 Tennessee sweeping Missouri, as the Lady Vols have really stepped it up this season. They've really had a great season, and back to the BYU Houston matchup, that was a good win for the Cougars. They were just throwing a block party, and there were just a bunch of rallies. That match had it all, and honestly, winning at BYU is so tough, and Houston gave BYU all that it can handle in the first set. I just think that losing that first set was so deflating. Then on Thursday, I kind of forgot this matchup was on national TV as well. This matchup was on FS1. Number 12 Minnesota took on Iowa. Now, I kind of forgot Iowa was flying under the radar. I didn't think Minnesota was going to have too many problems with this, but this matchup actually went 5. Now, I actually was out and about, sadly. I had to show my support to my former set point guest, Dave Huber, and his Los Alamitos girls volleyball team, as they took on my alma mater, Newport Harbor, which Los Alamitos won, but I digress on that. So, I wish I could have seen this matchup, but unfortunately I can't be at 2 places at one time. But it was a great matchup, which Minnesota edged Iowa in 5 sets on FS1. So great job to Minnesota. And Iowa, there's no shame in losing to Minnesota. Minnesota has had its up and down preseason, but they're still the Minnesota that is really good. Also on Thursday, we had UCF winning its Big 12 debut over Cincinnati in 4 sets at Cincinnati. It was another battle of the Big 12 debuts between 2 Big 12 newcomers, as UCF won that matchup. I also want to say they won the second matchup. So UCF is kind of flying under the radar. I think those Knights are slightly good. They're sneaky good. I really don't think that they're going to finish 12th or however lower they were supposed to finish. So regardless, I really think that UCF can definitely do damage in their conference. I hope they can. So let's see what happens with them going forward. And then Friday came, and Friday was quite the fun times right there. So on Friday, we had number 3 Florida edging out number 24 Auburn in 5 at Auburn. So this was actually the first match without Alexis Stuckey, and honestly, it was quite the barn burner. And you really, really can't blame Florida for having to go 5 against Auburn. Auburn is kind of under the radar, if you ask me. But not having Alexis Stuckey is starting to affect Florida. I really think Kennedy Huff can really do work for Florida. I think she can do work. She can do great things. However, she's certainly no Alexis Stuckey, and I really feel bad for her that she's out for the season. But I really think Kennedy Huff can really step up. It's just going to take some getting used to, and it is kind of a tough deal with your first match being thrown into the fire against Wisconsin, and then the second match you're being thrown into the fire against another ranked opponent, and Kennedy Muff, not Kennedy Huff, I'm sorry. Kennedy Muff, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Florida fans, don't kill me. Okay, but Kennedy Muff was definitely the one that got thrown into the fire in their first 2 matchups against Wisconsin, and then she got thrown into the fire against Auburn, another ranked opponent, which is under the radar. So, in all honesty, for Florida, I think they'll be fine. They just got to get Kennedy Muff more reps. But more on that on Florida a little bit later. Now, also on Friday, we had another interesting matchup. This came from the Big 12. We had, and I said there was one upset. Apparently, I was never good at math. I'm sorry. But we had Texas Tech reverse sweeping number 17 Kansas at home. And this was, okay, let me just tell you this. Friday, I kind of forgot that there was volleyball happening because I had a lot going on Friday. I had work fairly early in the morning. Not early, but I had work early. Then after that, I had to do SoCal Supreme Sports Show. And then after that, I had to do my second job, which was cover high school football, which was very taxing, if you ask me. Which I was trying my best to try to look at as much volleyball as I can, but unfortunately, it was just to no avail. So I really did my best to try to look at all the volleyball that I could look at throughout the entirety of the entire day of Friday. But sadly, it was just so tough for me. But it is what it is at this point, and c'est la vie, I guess. All right, but back to Texas Tech. Their win over Kansas was very impressive, and our former set point guest, Daniel Gilman, got to be an analyst on the broadcast. Now, normally he's play-by-play, and he does do broadcasting for Texas Tech women's volleyball matches, but he had to fill the role as the analyst, which was cool and whatnot. So I kind of gave him a little bit of a shout-out there just because I feel that's cool and whatnot, and yeah. I gotta show love to my former set point guest, but Kansas took the first set 25-22 and then rolled past Texas Tech in the second set 25-14. Then in sets 3 and 4, Texas Tech woke up. I don't know what it was, but they never trailed. There were no ties in sets 3 and 4. They wound up winning those sets by scores of 25-17 and 25-21. And then set 5, Texas Tech never trailed, though there were 3 ties, as Texas Tech wound up winning set 5 15-12, completing the reverse sweep, which was fantastic, as Caitlin Dugan led the way with 18 kills, while Bryn Williams added 10 kills, Reagan Engler had 9 kills, and Kate Hansen had 8 kills. Texas Tech as a team only hit 161, while Kansas hit no better. They hit 186, as Kansas was led by Aya Enadi. If I mispronounce these names, I very, very, very much apologize. Aya Enadi, as she had 14 kills. Reagan Cooper had 13 kills. London Davis, 11 kills. And Toyosi Onabanjo had 10 kills. In terms of blocks, Kansas got the better of Texas Tech in blocks 16-11. Kansas also outdug Texas Tech 95-80. That is quite a bit. Texas Tech did win the serve battle as they had 9 aces to Kansas's 4. But I didn't know how Kansas wound up losing this one. I feel Kansas kind of let this one slip away. This was played in Texas at the United Supermarkets Arena, but unfortunately in Lubbock, Texas. However, I just feel that Kansas, I think Kansas just kind of let this one slip away, which you can't do in terms of conference play. They did manage to sweep Texas Tech the following day, which is good, but in a conference where it's wide open and every match is so precious and you have to get the wins over the really good teams such as Baylor, Houston, BYU, Texas, you got to beat the teams that are unranked and that are ripe for the picking. I know there's a lot of good teams in that conference that are under the radar, like TCU is good, Kansas State can be sneaky good as well. Iowa State is flying under the radar. They're probably the most underappreciated of the Big 12 schools. But you just can't lose to the teams that are like unknown and unranked, in my opinion. You just can't. But that was that little matchup right there. Also on Friday, we had Long Beach State winning its Big West Conference opener against Cal Poly in a 5-set thriller. Now, I was going to go to this game, but I got called in to my second job, and sadly, I was having to cover high school football instead of going to the barn burner that was Cal Poly versus Long Beach State. Now, I was kind of seeing this matchup on Twitter, but unfortunately, it's not the same as being at the match. The match went 5, as I just said, and Cal Poly actually jumped out to a 6-1 lead and forced Long Beach State to burn one of its timeouts. But Long Beach State rallied back and eventually held off Cal Poly, winning the 5th set 15-13, and it was actually their first conference opening win for Long Beach State since 2018. Now, the problem was they had lost those previous conference openers in 2019, 2021, and last season, as their first conference opponent was none other than Cal Poly. Sometimes they were playing at the Pyramid in Long Beach, and sometimes they were playing at I think it's the Mott Center in San Luis Obispo. If I mispronounce the Center Arena, I apologize, Cal Poly fans. But for Long Beach State to get that win, very impressive. But I'll be discussing a little bit more on Long Beach later. But we have to get to Saturday's matchup against Xavier. Oh boy. Now this was a barn burner. This was something I never would have expected in 1,000 years. So going into this matchup, Xavier actually had never, ever beaten Creighton. Until that day, as Creighton took the first set 25-21, Xavier returned the favor with the same score, except they took it. Creighton won the third set 25-17. Then Xavier wound up winning set 4, 25-20. And then in set number 5, Xavier, being the little engine that could, was able to take that 5th set 15-10, completing the upset over number 11 Creighton and winning against Creighton for the first time in its program's history, which was a huge win. Emma Grace led Xavier with 15 kills, while Anna Taylor added 12 kills. Delaney Hogan added 11 kills for Xavier as the Musketeers hit 188. They also had 12 blocks to Creighton's 6, and even though they were outdug 94-87, they did out-ace them 9-4, even though they missed 11 serves. But that just goes to show that Xavier was serving tough. The Jays, on the other hand, or the Blue Jays, on the other hand, were led by Ava Martin, who had 21 kills. Kiana Schmidt had 14 kills. Destiny Ndam Simpson had 8 kills. Still no NORCECA. They did not have NORCECA, which, again, that's a bummer right there. This is where Creighton misses NORCECA. Now, I did say that if Creighton didn't have NORCECA in their win over Minnesota, they'd be scary with her. Now this is the point where you have to wonder, can they get NORCECA back as soon as possible? Hopefully for their sake they can, but I will just say this, Rome wasn't built in a day, and whatever, I think it was an abdomen injury, NORCECA can't really rush that back. Which it is a bummer that Creighton lost that one, and they really, really need that fearless leader NORCECA back. But it is what it is at this point, just because you got to have the next player step up. Ava Martin is just as much of a beast as NORCECA, and Kiana Schmidt definitely helps the cause in that. In terms of the digs, Kendra Waite had 26 digs for Creighton, and then there was also 19 digs from Ellie Bolton, who had 10 assists for that little double-double. Kendra Waite also added 45 assists to go along with those 26 digs, which was quite nice. Ava Martin had 15 digs, and then Sky McCoon had 16 digs. Xavier had Stevie Wolf tally 25 digs, while Lucia Corsaro had 21 digs. Garrigan O'Reilly had 12 digs to go along with 48 assists, and Logan Flau had 10 digs. Unfortunately for Creighton, they fell as Xavier pulled off an amazing win. And I will also just say this, Xavier was my team of the week for week 5. They also beat Butler early in the week as Xavier starts Big East Conference play 2-0, which is very good. My big thing is, can they keep it up? And if they face Creighton again when they get NORCECA back, can they possibly pull off that same upset? For their sake, I hope they can, but let's not hold our breaths too much on it. Not that I'm doubting Xavier, but I think that Creighton with NORCECA would probably win this match 9 times out of 10. But it's still a good win for Xavier, especially when you haven't beaten that team in your conference at any time in your program. So it is a good win for Xavier. And then also on Saturday, we had UC Santa Barbara defeating Long Beach State in 4 sets, which was the second match that I attended in person. The first one was UC Davis taking on UC Irvine, which was reverse swept by UC Davis. But UC Santa Barbara, okay, if we're talking about a team that's flying under the radar, UC Santa Barbara is that team. If they did not lose to Drake in that same week they beat Iowa State, they would be so close to being ranked. They are currently receiving votes in the current AVCA coaches poll, which I'll get into that in a little bit. But UC Santa Barbara is flying under the radar. They've got some quality wins under their belt. They've got wins over New Mexico State. They got a win over Pepperdine, which was via a reverse sweep. They got a win over Utah, which was big. It's never an easy team to beat, especially, I think they also beat them at Utah. And then they also beat Iowa State, which was ranked at the time. So UC Santa Barbara, and their only 2 losses were to Oregon, which obviously that's a really good team. And then Drake, which was kind of a little bit of a letdown loss. And we all know what happens when you upset a Big 12 team and then a few days after you kind of have a little bit of a letdown couple days after. So, I mean, Long Beach State knows. But that win is special for UC Santa Barbara because it was their first win at Long Beach State since 2011. So, and in addition, they had snapped a 10-game losing skid when it came to facing Long Beach State at Long Beach State. You also got to remember, 2020, no Big West Conference teams played because I don't know the reason why. But I will say this Santa Barbara team is so special. I feel even if they don't win the Big West Conference tournament in its inaugural season, I think they can get in as an at-large because they don't have too many bad losses as long as they play their cards right. Now, if they manage to pick up a few not-so-good losses, like when it comes to the Big West Conference, the definition of a bad loss would probably be, and this is no disrespect to some of these teams in the Big West Conference, Cal State Fullerton, UC Riverside, UC Irvine, those type of teams. But if they're losing to like Hawaii, which Hawaii is favored to beat Santa Barbara, Long Beach State, which is not too far back from them, you also got to remember they've played a pretty good schedule as well, and they have some decent wins under their belt. And then Davis is solid, even though they don't really have the best and flashiest of wins, but still a solid team. And then Cal Poly, which went 1-1 this past weekend, which included a reverse sweep over UC San Diego. Those are some solid teams in the conference. UC San Diego could also be a little bit of an under-the-radar team because that team was slated to finish 7th in the conference. They're knocking on the door to possibly, hence the word possibly, making their way up into the top 6. Because you got to remember, top 6 teams make the Big West Conference tournament. And then the top 2 teams in the regular season get a bye in that Big West Conference tournament. So if Santa Barbara, like I said, if they play their cards right, if they find a way to upset Hawaii, and they manage to not pick up too many losses along the way, they could be the 1 seed or the 2 seed, and then they could be in the NCAA tournament. Heck, I'm just also going to go out on a limb and say, I think the Big West Conference could have 3 teams in the NCAA tournament. I think Hawaii is one of them, I think Santa Barbara is one of them, and I think Long Beach State can be the 3rd team. I think Long Beach State will eventually right the ship and find their way to making one push to making the NCAA tournament. I think they've got the resume to do so, and they've played a very tough schedule. They don't really have too many bad losses, not for the moment, and I hope I didn't just jinx that for Tyler Hildebrand, but I will say Long Beach State, I think, can make the NCAA tournament, even if they don't win the Big West Conference tournament, because that Texas win alone should be more than enough of a convincer to put them into the tournament. Now, if they lose in the first round of the Big West Conference tournament, then that's another story. Then they'll probably be in the NIVC at best. But regardless, it's still week 1 of conference. It was still week 1 of conference play. We still have plenty of weeks to go. All right, jumping to Sunday. Number 3 Florida outlasted Georgia in 5 sets. Now, Georgia is such an under-the-radar team. Georgia has pulled off upsets before, and strangely enough, they managed to pull an upset against Florida in the past. And you got to remember that Kennedy Muff is basically still in her first full week as the setter at Florida. And that she basically has to, have her training wheels. Okay, maybe not training wheels, but she basically is still trying to get used to being the setter 1. But Kennedy Muff is still still the girl that can get the job done. She just still needs more full-on reps. And this week did not do her any justice because, again, you're playing a solid Auburn team, and then you've got a solid Georgia team, which is flying under the radar, especially when they beat Georgia Tech. So I honestly think that once Kennedy Muff gets more reps, like this week, I think she'll be much more comfortable. It's just going to take a little while, especially when you lose a leader like Alexis Stuckey. That's just so tough, seeing her out for the entire season. That's just so tough. Also on Sunday, we had number 5 Louisville taking down Boston College in 4 sets. Now, this goes to show that Boston College can hang with some tough teams. Boston College unfortunately also lost to Notre Dame in 5 sets, which I think Notre Dame has improved as well. Notre Dame and Boston College are kind of on the same level. I think both teams are out for respect, and Notre Dame's just picking up the pieces because they used to be really good back in the day, and then unfortunately things happened. Players eventually transferred out. They got a new head coach, and Salima Rockwell, and she's just trying to pick up the pieces for the Fighting Irish. Speaking of Notre Dame, they went 2-0 this past weekend, beating Syracuse and Boston College. Unfortunately for the Eagles of Boston College, they went 0-2. It's never easy having to take on the number 5 team in the nation, but taking a set off them is pretty good. I think Boston College is going to finish higher than, 12th in their conference that they were projected to finish. I really think that they are not a 12th place team. I definitely think they're much higher than 12th place. They're finishing at least in the top 8. That's kind of my prediction. We had another close call on Sunday as number 7 Washington State outlasted Arizona in 5 sets. Now, I hate to say this, and I really, really hate to say this, as I wasn't really paying attention to a whole lot of volleyball because I was at my retail job, the grocery store business, rolls eyes, as unfortunately I couldn't really check my phone, I couldn't really watch a whole lot of TV and whatnot, but what can you do? So Washington State outlasted Arizona in Tucson in 5 sets, which is huge. Now, earlier in the week, Washington State swept Washington in the Apple Cup, round 1 of the Apple Cup, which was quite impressive. Now, I might think that Washington State might have had a little bit of an Apple Cup hangover, just because I feel when you beat a rival in that convincingly, I feel that might make you a little bit complacent. That's kind of how I feel, but maybe Washington State just kind of got caught on a bad day against Arizona, which happens. I mean, Washington State has been riding a lot of waves of momentum, beating BYU, then Baylor, then Texas, and then Washington, and then they face this Arizona team, which isn't really on the level of those previous 4 teams that I mentioned, and then they have to go 5. So I think it was kind of a big change of pace for the Cougars, and they basically kind of got caught off guard, but was able to right the ship and win in 5 sets. Now this week they've got Oregon, which, oh man, that is going to be a barn burner right there. That should be nationally televised. But I will also say they have also got Oregon State, which they can't underestimate. And then also on Sunday, we had another nationally televised game. We had number 14 Tennessee taking on number 22 Kentucky, which saw the Lady Vols take down Kentucky in straight sets. Now, I was basically saying that Tennessee was going to have its biggest test of the season in SEC play against Kentucky. And it had been a while since Tennessee had taken down Kentucky. You know how long? I'll let y'all try to guess this one. Okay, time's up. So the last time Tennessee had beaten Kentucky was 2016, according to NCAA women's volleyball. And that is quite a long time. So if you're a Tennessee women's volleyball fan, you have probably had your heart ripped out by this team, and it was probably gut-wrenching, and it was just heartbreaking loss. Or 2016. Did I say 2017? I meant 2016. But still, if you're a Tennessee volleyball fan, you have probably had your heart ripped out. You've probably been heartbroken. You've probably just said, ugh, Tennessee had such a promising team and they lost to Kentucky again. But now they managed to take down the Wildcats, which was huge for that team. It's huge for the Lady Vols because you got to remember their only loss was to Wisconsin. Number 1 Wisconsin, for that matter, as they almost reverse swept them, but didn't. So, for Tennessee, they passed that first test in the ACC with flying colors. And also sweeping Missouri on national TV was also big time right there as well. And I'm calling me impressed because I really think, and this was on the road, mind you. This was on the road, and it's never easy to beat a rival on the road. However, when you beat a rival on the road, it's much more satisfying and sweetening, if you ask me. And there are lots of big-time plays from Kentucky, Tennessee. Unfortunately, I didn't get to see all of the match, but I will say Tennessee is really starting to show why they deserve to be ranked. And I'm just going to say this. Tennessee is not to be underestimated. You don't want to sleep on the Lady Vols. And they may have a really good chance to winning the SEC. There's a reason why they got at least one first-place vote. I'll say this about Kentucky. I don't think they're the same team. Yes, I did hear that they didn't have one of their best players, but you still got to defend home court. And SEC play is where you really have to come up big, because if you don't, you're going to be at the mercy of not only the top teams in the conference, such as Tennessee, Florida, Arkansas, and Auburn, but some of the other under-the-radar teams as well. Heck, Missouri might not be too bad. I mean, they lost a lot to the transfer portal, but they still have a really good coach in Dawn Sullivan, and she helped turn UNLV around. She could do the same thing with Missouri. And they have some stud players. That libero on Missouri is quite solid as well. So I think for the SEC, it's getting tougher and tougher, and Kentucky really has to adapt. And heck, even Kentucky had a little bit of a tough time against LSU, who I kind of think has been a little bit, I wouldn't say disappointing, but a little underwhelming, if you ask me. I thought LSU was going to be a whole lot better than this, but they kind of aren't. Yes, they did have that win over UCLA, but they haven't really been overly spectacular. But that was a huge win for Tennessee, beating Kentucky on the road for the first time since 2016. And, well, first time altogether since 2016, but Tennessee was long overdue for a win over the Wildcats. And then to close out the recap for Week 5, Cal almost reverse swept Utah. They almost reverse swept Utah at Utah. Unfortunately, Utah was able to pull out the 5th set win. I think they won it like 15-13. I want to say it was rather close, as Utah managed to escape with the 5-set win over Cal. And I feel so horrible for Cal, because Cal, it's been a while since they've won a conference game. They have lost a whopping 57 conference matches, which their last conference win was on February 12th, 2021, which was the post-COVID season, where they beat Stanford, and Stanford was a hot mess that year. Ooh. But I will just say, I feel Cal can get at least one Pac-12 conference win. I really want them to get a Pac-12 conference win, because what's going to happen with Cal when they leave the conference? Will they be able to adapt in the ACC? I think they will. I mean, they should be able to, but heaven knows if the ACC is going to get better than this year or last year and whatnot. So we'll see. But that is going to do it for all of the notable results and all the upsets that happened in Week 5. Let's go over the coaches poll for this week. The AVCA/NCAA Division I /TaraFlex Women's Volleyball Coaches Poll. So 25 through 21 consists of Arizona State at 25, Auburn at 24, Kentucky at 23, Ohio State at 22, and Dayton at 21. 20 through 16 consists of Houston at 20, Kansas at 19, Baylor at 18, Purdue at 17, and Creighton at 16. 15 through 11 consists of Penn State at 15, Arkansas at 14, Minnesota at 13, Tennessee at 12, and Georgia Tech at 11. 10 through 6 consists of Texas at 10, BYU at 9, Pitt at 8, Washington State at 7, and Oregon at 6. 5 through 1 consists of Louisville at 5, Florida at 4, Stanford at 3, Nebraska at 2, and your still number 1 team in the AVCA/TaraFlex NCAA Division I Women's Volleyball Coaches Poll is Wisconsin. Yeah, Wisconsin pretty much blew past their opponents in conference play, as well as Nebraska, as they swept Minnesota, which is kind of not surprising, but I was very surprised that it was a little bit of a sweep. I mean, I wanted it to go more than 3 sets, but Nebraska is a machine. I would not be surprised if Wisconsin and Wisconsin and Nebraska met one another undefeated. That needs to be nationally televised on ESPN. And no, we are not including Big Ten Network, because not everyone has the freaking Big Ten Network like me. So you're all probably wondering why Florida dropped to number 4. Well, unfortunately, their loss, they didn't lose, but they had to go 5 with both Georgia and Auburn. Now, I kind of think that's a little unfair, just because you have a new setter that is trying to learn the system and adapt to, and the team is still adapting to not having its leader, Alexis Stuckey. And I will say this, I think it's a little unfair dropping them from 3 to 4, especially since they swept Stanford. And Stanford needed a reverse sweep to beat Louisville, where if they had beaten Louisville in 4, or if it was a whole different outcome of beating Louisville, then maybe we could be singing a whole different tune. But I think Florida, in my opinion, they deserve to still be at number 3. I understand where people are coming from with Stanford jumping up, but you gotta remember, Florida's only loss was to Wisconsin, and they almost beat Wisconsin, albeit they were reverse swept. But you got to remember, they lost to Alexis Stuckey that match, and even though they won that second set where they lost Stuckey, just losing her kind of swung the momentum. And half of you will probably say if Alexis Stuckey had played, Florida beats Wisconsin. The other half of you will probably say even if Alexis Stuckey had played, Wisconsin would still win. Just you can call it whatever you want, a spade, whatever, but it is what it is, as Wisconsin eventually wound up winning, and here's hoping we will see Wisconsin and Florida sometime down the road. And you're probably wondering how Arizona State got into the top 25. Well, Arizona State is undefeated, just like Wisconsin and the Citadel and a few other teams that are probably undefeated. Wyoming's not undefeated, that's for sure. But Arizona State is undefeated. They beat Washington in 4 sets on Sunday, which that's kind of a great win. That's a pretty solid win for the Sun Devils. And for them being ranked is quite impressive. I really think that Arizona State will add a little spice to the Pac-12. It's funny how the Pac-12 is looking really good and interesting in its final season, whereas every other team is practically going to be leaving, such as USC, UCLA, Washington, and Oregon leaving for the Big Ten. And then you have Stanford, Cal leaving for the ACC. And then you've got all the other teams except for Washington State and Oregon State leaving for the Big 12. And then heaven knows what's going to happen with Washington State and Oregon State. Maybe they inherit the Mountain West. Maybe they just go elsewhere. I don't know. That's for another day. But that is going to do it for the AVCA Women's Volleyball Division I coaches poll. So let's jump on over to some high school girls volleyball. I know that's not everyone's cup of tea, but it is what it is. But before I do that, I'm sorry to have to jump from this, but remember the Wisconsin-Florida game as well as the match, the Louisville-Stanford match. The Stanford-Louisville match on ESPN2 garnered 123,000 viewers on ESPN2 in 155 minutes. I really wish there could have been more, but I kind of forgot that the NFL was king on the NFL is always king on Sunday, which really stinks. And then for Wisconsin-Florida, that averaged 193,000 viewers in over 178 minutes. Now, there was actually another nationally televised match, which was on Fox Sports, as Oregon at Marquette was being played, so I forgot about that. Oops. But that was actually a straight sets win for Oregon, which, despite being played in 96 minutes, that totaled 325,000 total average viewers, which is very impressive. That is courtesy of at Sports TV Ratings site. Or the Sports TV Ratings site. Which, that's pretty impressive. For a 3-set win, you garnered more viewers than Wisconsin, Florida, and Stanford-Louisville. Not combined, though, but still, it's rather impressive. Or maybe it was combined. Again, I was never the sharpest at math. Okay, it's just barely was... it's still... Oregon-Marquette almost had almost had more viewers than Wisconsin, Florida, and Stanford-Louisville combined. Sorry, got a little tongue-tied there. But all in all, there was a combined average of 641,000 viewers when it came to those 3 matches. Now, you're probably thinking, oh, well, that's not too much. And I really wish there could have been more. I was thinking maybe 500,000 or maybe 250,000. Yeah, I forgot Sunday is NFL Day. Blech. But I will say this, and this is according to volleyballmag.com, for a so-called niche sport is a 641,000 for a so-called niche sport is a staggering number against the stiffest competition that could be found on typical day TV, which is very impressive. I mean, honestly, the fact that they had to compete with the NFL is rough, but the fact that they were able to basically garner those numbers, it's pretty good. So hats off to the viewers that basically tuned into those matches and blew up the viewership ratings. I tried to the best of my ability to watch those matches, especially on my little iPhone, just because I was watching back and forth with the Chargers, the Chargers Vikings, the Chargers Titans game and the other NFL games, and then the NCAA women's volleyball match, and then I had to go to work after that. So yeah. So there's that right there, and I'm hoping we can continue to grow the viewership of all nationally televised volleyball matches. So there's that right there. All right, now we can get on into the Durango tournament. So I'm just going to go down the teams that won their pool, as unfortunately the Durango tournament didn't have their pools posted when I previewed this whole tournament last week. But the teams that won their pool were Mira Costa, Presentwood of Texas, Torrey Pines of San Diego, Mira Costa obviously being Manhattan Beach, Lone Peak, I want to say that's from Texas, Cornerstone Christian of Texas, Assumption of Kentucky, Sierra Canyon of Chatsworth, California, Xavier College Prep of Phoenix, Arizona, Mater Dei of Santa Ana, California, Archbishop Mitty of San Jose, California, St. Francis of Mountain View, California, Branson, which I'm actually blanking on where Branson is. I'm sorry. Either way, Branson is the Branson won their pool. And then Cathedral Catholic of San Diego, they won their pool. Huntington Beach of Huntington Beach, California, they won their pool. The high school of former Set Point guest and friend of the show, Craig Pizzanti. Redondo Union of Redondo Beach wound up winning their pool. And Bishop Alemany of Woodland Hills wound up winning their pool. So good job to those teams for winning their pool in Durango. That's pretty impressive, because when you win your pool, you have to win your pool in order to advance to the gold bracket. If you finish second, no, it doesn't cut it. You get advanced to the lower level consolation bracket, and then so on and so forth. So there's that. There is no whatchamacallit. There's no almost is not good enough. And Branson is located in Ross, California. So it's probably located in Northern California. So yeah, it's a little town in California. So it's in Marin County, California, just north of San Francisco. So there you go. All right, so now for the knockout round. So the knockout round goes top 16 teams face one another, and when you go to the knockout round, it's basically if you win, you continue on. If you lose, you go down to the the consolation. So in the first matchup, we had Mira Costa outlasting Alemany 25-6, 27-29, and 25-17. So here's how the format works in Durango. If the match, it's best 2 out of 3, but all matches go to 25 points, and you have to win by 2. So if a match goes to a third set, it goes to 25 and not to 15. I don't know why. Don't ask me. I'm not in charge of this tournament, so... But anyway, Mira Costa outlasted Alemany in 3 sets. Huntington Beach outlasted Torrey Pines in 3 sets, 19-25, 25-20, and 25-19. Presentwood swept Redondo Union, 25-17 and 25-20. Cathedral Catholic swept Lone Peak, 25-15 and 25-21. St. Francis Assumption beat St. Francis in 3, 10-25, 27-25, and 25-20. Getting my eyes crossed over here when it comes to these scores. And then Mater Dei swept Xavier College Prep 25-13 and 25-15. Sierra Canyon swept Archbishop Mitty 25-21 and 29-27. And then Cornerstone Christian swept Branson 25-23 and 25-21. So that is basically your qualifying round, or the round of 16, as everyone likes to call it. Jumping over to the quarterfinals, we had Mira Costa taking on Huntington Beach in the first quarterfinal, where Mira Costa wound up beating the Oilers of Huntington Beach 25-17 and 25-20. Tough loss for Craig Pizzanti and the Oilers, but as I told him via text, Mira Costa is very good as advertised. You got to remember, they have Charlie Furbringer as their setter, who's committed to Wisconsin, and they have a whole bunch of other young and talented players on the come up. And everyone thought that they were going to be rebuilding after losing their heavy senior class from last year. No, Mira Costa is not rebuilding at any time. They're reloading. Then we had Cathedral Catholic sweeping Prestonwood. I'm sorry. God, my eyes. I must be dyslexic today. Cathedral Catholic swept Prestonwood 26-24, 25-18. Then Mater Dei edged out Assumption 22-25, 25-23, and 25-20. Then Sierra Canyon beat out Cornerstone Christian via a sweep 25-20 and 25-23. That is kind of an upset right there, just because Cornerstone Christian is one of the top teams in the nation. But something to note is that Sierra Canyon did have a few transfers come in, and they weren't eligible. They did not have those talented transfers in the Ann Kang tournament in Hawaii. But now that those players are now eligible to partake in said tournaments and said matches, Sierra Canyon is going to be a whole different team, especially since they're eligible and whatnot. So that's going to be fun times for Sierra Canyon. So the semifinals, we had Mira Costa sweeping Cathedral Catholic 25-17 and 25-19. Then we had Mater Dei edging out Sierra Canyon 20-25, 25-22, and 25-11. And I guess I'll mention the the consolation matches. We had Prestonwood beating Huntington Beach 25-17 and 25-10. And then Cornerstone Christian beating Assumption 25-15, 21-25, and 25-12. Assumption and Huntington Beach just tied for 7th place, just because there's no point in playing another 7th place matchup, just because your team wants to avoid as many injuries as possible. And this is a very long tournament. No one wants to basically keep on playing I wouldn't say worthless matches, but they wouldn't want to play like matches that can be avoided if both teams are in agreement to. But for the 5th place matchup, Prestonwood took down Cornerstone Christian 25-17, 22-25, and 25-22. And then in the 3rd place matchup between Cathedral Catholic and Sierra Canyon, both those teams agreed to not play a 3rd place match because there's no point in playing a 3rd place match. Because you don't want your players to get injured, and it's a long day. It's 2 long days of tournaments and being away from California. And again, if both teams are in agreement to not wanting to play a meaningless consolation match, then you don't need to, and it can be avoided. You don't need to. So the 2 teams just tie for 3rd place. Now for the championship, Mater Dei versus Mira Costa. Mira Costa took the first set 25-18. So if you're wondering, there's a slight theme to this. Mater Dei has dropped the first set in the quarterfinals, the semifinals, and now the final. What happens next? Mater Dei takes the 2nd set against Mira Costa 25-20, as it's going to a 3rd and decisive set for the Durango tournament crown. I want to say the last time Mater Dei won Durango was when Craig Pizzanti, yes, the same Craig Pizzanti, my former set point guest, he was the head coach. And I don't know if Mira Costa's won Durango. I think the last time they won Durango was 2007, when they wound up going undefeated. But I could be wrong. Regardless, Mater Dei wound up winning set number 3, 25-21, which gave them their first Durango championship under the head coach of Dan Odell. And I didn't tweet it out, but it was a huge win for Mater Dei because that avenged an early season loss to the Mustangs as the Monarchs of Mater Dei of Santa Ana reigned supreme in the Durango tournament, which was huge for them. And honestly, good for them. I'm happy they were able to win, as they actually did not have Ava Ostavar, who is the setter of the Ostavar sisters, as she did hurt her ankle, and I don't know when she's going to be coming back. I'd have to check out another Mater Dei matchup and ask head coach Dan Odell. I was going to check one out on Wednesday, but unfortunately something came up, and I am no longer able to go to one of their matches, which stinks, but it is what it is. Anyway, so now for the all-tournament team. So all-tournament consists of Avery Jackson of Hockaday, Sadie Snipes of Branson, Addison Williams of Huntington Beach, Charlotte Moriarty of Assumption, Megan Fitch of Cornerstone Christian, Masaria Spears of Prestonwood, Maya Evans, who I interviewed at the Dave Mose tournament, of Cathedral Catholic, Tiana Owens of Cathedral Catholic, Danica Rock of Sierra Canyon, Lauren Lynch of Sierra Canyon, Taylor Deckert of Mira Costa, Audrey Flanagan of Mira Costa, Charlie Furbringer of Mira Costa, Melissa Kawa of Mater Dei, Laylee Ostavar of Mater Dei, Isabel Clark of Mater Dei, and your tournament MVP of the Durango tournament, or the Durango Fall Classic, is... Can we get a drum roll, please? Julia Kakis, the commit to Brown. So that's basically your all-tournament team for the Durango Fall Classic, and honestly, it was a great tournament. I've never really been to this tournament, unfortunately. I've been in Vegas when they've had the tournament, but sadly I never really checked out the tournament just because reasons. But honestly, it's always a great tournament which attracts all of the best teams all over the world. Not just from California, but from Kentucky, Texas. It's just quite amazing. And also, can I just say that 3 of the 4 teams that made the semifinals of the Durango Fall Classic were from the southern section. You had Sierra Canyon, Mater Dei, and Mira Costa. Just goes to show that, and this is not to knock any of the other teams from any of the other sections and any other states, but the southern section I think kind of does it best. Again, not trying to disrespect everyone else, but I think the southern section does it best when it comes to Mater Dei, Mira Costa, Sierra Canyon. I'm sure is going to be back on the rise because remember, they are the defending champions. You also can't sleep on Huntington Beach. That team is pretty good, and they have not lost a best 3 out of 5 match. And I'm sure Craig Pizzanti, our former set point guest and friend of the show, is going to be doing great things with the Oilers this season. And the other team that made the semifinals with Cathedral Catholic, which you have to remember, they have a new roster, but they still have players that can really get the job done for their team. And I really think that they can get the job. I think they could do good in their section, the San Diego section. They obviously will have the stiff competition in Torrey Pines, which was a barn burner when they played then. They wound up winning in 5 sets. But I'm certain we'll see Cathedral Catholic in the CIF State Open Division playoffs come state playoffs time. But that's going to do it for some high school girls volleyball talk. We're going to take ourselves a quick break. When we come back, we're going to discuss some USA men's and women's volleyball. Then we're going to preview Week 6 of the NCAA women's volleyball season. So keep it locked here. You are listening to Set Point here on IA Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that sports. We'll be right back after this.
Hello, sports fans. It's me, your boy Larry B, and I want to walk you through the world of sports. No, no, no. Not just the mainstream major TV deal type sports, although those are important too. But let me be your guide through your journey of all sports, from college to the pros, the minors, and everything in between. Each week, we are talking sports galore with true diehards just like you from a hardcore fan's perspective that's sure to quench your thirst around leagues you may know all too well and some you may even discover here. That's right, sports fans. If you love sports of all kinds, enjoy hearing amazing sports stories, and respect all sports because you know how difficult any of them can be to play or compete in, then this is your show. Join me, your boy Larry B, on The Defining Moment each week here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports, and let the sports come to you.
Hello, ladies and sinners. Hello, sports fans around the world. Hello, IE Sports family. This is Cale Henderson, the host of IE Vegas, the Sin City Sports Show, presented by IE Sports Radio. If you folks are interested in sports in the Vegas area, if you're wanting to have a blast for 1 hour, every Tuesday night from 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time to 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, this is a show built for the Vegas sports fans, where we feature the Las Vegas Raiders, the Las Vegas Golden Knights, the Las Vegas Aces, and the University of Las Vegas, Nevada Rebels. Hopefully, fingers crossed, MLB team coming soon. Either way, if you folks are looking to have a blast for 1 hour each and every week, tune in Tuesday, 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time to 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. If you folks are interested in Vegas sports news, go to our Twitter, at SinCities_IESR, and you can speak with me, the host, Cale Henderson, at Cale_Henderson on Twitter. At any time, be happy to reply. Always want to reach out to our fans. Again, the Sin City Sports Show, presented by IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Sports fans, do you like teams that are tough, cities that are tougher, and fan bases that are passionate about their teams? How about teams that are historic and stadiums that are iconic? Then you belong in Chicago, and you need to check out Chi-Town Weekly. Join me, Adam Kernan, every week as we keep up with all things Chicago sports. Bears, Bulls, Blackhawks, Cubs, White Sox. We'll cover them all, plus more. The Windy City is always buzzing, and we'll keep you up on all the big games and major stories. So tune in to Chi-Town Weekly every week right here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Back with segment number 2 of Set Point here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that sports. Definitely check out all of our amazing shows, such as Sin City Sports with Cale Henderson, The Defining Moment with Larry B., the head honcho of IE Sports Radio, and Chi-Town Weekly with Adam Carnick, which primarily goes live 1 hour before this show goes live, as Adam talks all things Chicago sports. But that being said, and speaking of Chicago, I actually do need to make note of something before I head on into the second segment of set point, and I really, really, really do apologize for leaving this kind of out of the fray right here, as there were two. Remember, you know how there are attendance records being broken at every single moment of the spectrum? Well, there were two records broken this past week, as you had Northwestern with its record broken in terms of its attendance record for its program, as against Wisconsin last Friday, we had a grand total of 4,889 in attendance at the Welsh Ryan Arena, which is pretty darn good if you ask me. I mean, it's not 5,000 or anything, but still, the fact that they broke that record means that they're still growing the game despite all that has unfortunately happened at Northwestern. Also, we had Oregon smashing, hence the word smashing their record this past Friday against Oregon State, as they had a attendance record broken in their program, as they had 7,334 in attendance in their match against Oregon State, which that's impressive. The Civil War? I don't know what's the true name of the rivalry. I think it's the Civil War. Either way, I'll just call it the Fight for Oregon, unless they haven't really scrapped the Civil War nickname. But either way, the Oregon State rivalry never disappoints, and it's big in women's volleyball as well, as it drew over 7,000 in attendance. That is incredible right there. So great job to Northwestern and to Oregon. A set point tip of the cap right there. So there was that right there. All right, now let's get on into segment number 2 of Set Point. So this past week, we had the U.S. men's national team playing in the NORCECA Pan Am Final Six. Now, they didn't have the actual national team. They didn't have like TJ DeFalco or Micah Ma or any of those guys. They had other players playing in this tournament. But they played in the NORCECA Final Six tournament in Edmonton, as on September 19th, which was last Tuesday, they kicked off the whole shebang, or the whole tournament, by sweeping the Dominican Republic 25-17, 25-9, and 25-19. Then, the day after, they swept Mexico 25-19, 25-17, and 25-19. Then, the day after that, they swept Puerto Rico 25-17, 25-17, and 25-11. Then, the day after that, they did not sweep Canada. They actually won that one in 4 sets, 22-25, 25-14, 25-20, and 25-17. And that ended pool play right there, as USA wound up winning their pool and advancing to the semifinals, because only the top 6 teams advanced to the knockout round, or the gold or the medal round. So the US got a first round bye, or a quarterfinal bye, because the 6 teams that make the knockout round, if you win your pool, you basically are in the semifinals. And then if you don't, you're basically paired up in the quarterfinals. And then if you win that matchup, you advance to face the winner of your pool. At least that's what I think. Anyway, so the U.S. eventually got to play Cuba, which the U.S. managed the day after they played Canada, as they managed to beat Cuba in straight sets 25-21, 25-20, and 25-13. And then in their championship match, in the gold medal match, they swept Canada 25-21, 25-14, and 25-16. They won off of a walk-off service ace from Camden Gianni, Grand Canyon's finest. I want to say he could be also a former NBA player. Speaking of NBA player, there were 2 NBA players on the men's national team, which wound up winning gold. Because I am Teran Rodriguez, your one-stop shop for all things volleyball news in the NBA. But as for all the players that wound up being on the U.S. men's national team, that consists of Troy Gooch of UCLA, Jordan Ewart of Stanford, Bryce Dvorak of Pepperdine, Matt Knigge of Vassar and the San Diego Wild, Camden Gianni of Grand Canyon, Andrew Rowan of UCLA, Patrick Gassman, formerly of Hawaii, Zach Rama, formerly of UCLA, I think, Mason Briggs of Long Beach State, Kyle McCauley, formerly of UC San Diego, Michael Marshman, I want to say formerly of St. Francis, Ethan Champlin of UCLA, Merrick McHenry of UCLA, and Jalen Penrose, formerly of Penn State, and currently on the Las Vegas Ramblers. And the head coach was Andy Reid, while the assistant coach was Brandon Taliaferro. The second assistant coach was Jeremiah Estes, and the athletic trainer was Rachel Kirkpatrick. Have to give the athletic trainers the shot because they're the ones that keep them from having sore muscles and keep them in game day shape. So that is basically the U.S. men's national team winning the NORCECA Pan Am Final Six tournament. So congratulations to the U.S. men's team. Well done. So as for the U.S. women's national team, they actually were partaking in the qualification to qualify for the 2024 Paris Olympic Games, which obviously was big time right there. So here's the thing. You didn't have to win your pool, but you did have to finish, I think it was either top 2 or top 3 at the end of everything to basically qualify for the Olympics. So this all started on September 16th. So this basically what started on Saturday, September 16th. So the U.S. swept Colombia 25-12, 25-12, and 25-13. Sunday, September 17th, the U.S. swept Thailand 25-13, 25-16, and 25-18. After a day off last Monday, they had to go forward with Slovenia as they wound up winning the first 2 sets 25-13 and 25-13. They lost the third set 20-25, but wound up taking the fourth set 25-13 to stay undefeated. The day after that, they took down Korea in 4 sets. They lost the first set 20-25, but wound up winning the next 3 25-17, 25-19, and 25-17. They had the day off the day after they defeated Korea, but they took down Italy in 4 sets 25-19, lost the second set 23-25, wound up winning the third set 25-21, and then they won the fourth set 25-18. Then on Saturday, unfortunately, they lost to Poland, which it was a win and you're in matchup. But Poland being the always good team that they are, or the drastically improved team that they are, they wound up getting the better of the U.S. as the U.S. lost the first set 27-25, wound up winning the second set 25-16, lost the third set 25-23, and then lost the fourth set 25-16. So that was probably a not so good loss. That was not the best match for the U.S. as it obviously was a loss. So the U.S. had to beat Germany in order to have a chance to qualify for the Olympics. But they did beat Germany yesterday as they beat them in 4 sets, 24-26, 25-21, 25-9, and 25-16. To qualify for the 2024 Paris Olympics. So this was the road to the Paris Olympic qualifier. This all took place in Lodz, Poland. God, it's probably mispronounced. I probably mispronounced the first name of that city in Poland, but it is what it is. And notice how it was in Poland, and Poland wound up beating the U.S. I mean, that's basically the home court advantage and whatnot. So you can't blame the U.S. for losing that one. And also remember, Poland has improved. So yeah, and they qualified for their 11th straight Olympic Games and their 13th overall, which is awesome sauce. And they finished first in their group and improved their world ranking to number 2, which is pretty good. I'm pretty sure the number 1 team is Turkey still, because reasons. So that is that for the U.S. women's team. Jumping back to the U.S. men's team, so they actually have their road to the Paris qualifier starting this week. Everything starts on September 29th, which is this Friday, and it ends on October 8th, which is not this Sunday, but the following Sunday. So, USA is in Pool B, which consists of Japan, Slovenia, Serbia, Turkey, Tunisia, Egypt, and Finland. So, there is that right there, and it's going to be a fun little matchup right there. And remember, they're coached by former set point guest John Speraw, and friend of the show. We can't forget about that. And unfortunately, I don't think it looks like they don't have their schedule up yet when it comes to that, which is kind of a bummer because I really would have liked to go over the matchups and whatnot. As their next matchup is against Egypt on September 30th, which is this Saturday. So I'm looking forward to what they can do, and that's their first matchup. And I definitely think that it's doable that they can qualify for the Olympics. I'm sure they can, as they've got lots of experience on their team. But I'm just wondering who is going to be on their team in terms of the finalized team. Will they have the TJ DeFalco to go along with the Matt Anderson and Taylor Averill and whatnot? But time will tell. But all will be decided this week as the U.S. is basically going to hopefully qualify for the Olympics. All right, but that is going to do it for the USA volleyball portion of the show. Before we get on out of here, we have the Week 6 volleyball matches to watch for. So we're going to start off on Wednesday. We have number 1 Wisconsin at number 21 Ohio State. Well, Ohio State just isn't the same team as they were last year. I hate to say it, but the Buckeyes are just not the team that they were. And it sucks because I like Jen Flynn Oldenburg, but this is kind of a rebuild year for the Buckeyes. Yes, they have Riley Rader and Emily Londot, but they could only go as far as that team can take them. Wisconsin is still loaded all across the board with Anna Smrek and Temi Thomas-Ilara, just to name a couple. So, and Izzy Ashburn. So, I'm just going to say this. Ohio State has the luxury of playing at home, but I would not be surprised if Wisconsin swept. Now, I hope Ohio State can give the Badgers a battle, but I just feel on paper Wisconsin is just way too overpowered for the Buckeyes. Also on Wednesday in SEC play, we have number 24 Auburn taking on number 16 Arkansas. So it's the battle of the two ranked SEC teams. I really think that Auburn can win this one. However, Arkansas is having themselves a good season. And remember, they also were one of the teams that took Wisconsin to 5. The other two were Florida and Tennessee. So we'll have to see if Arkansas can defend home court. But all in all, for Arkansas and Auburn, they're still having great seasons, and they're representing the SEC well. And for Auburn, some people thought that they were going to have a little bit of a step back, but they have risen from the grave like the Undertaker, and they are about to take some opponents down. Anyway, on Thursday, we have number 9 BYU heading down to Austin to take on Texas, number 10 Texas. This matchup will also be on Friday as well. Oh boy, this is the big test for BYU. I really think BYU can win. However, they're playing a fairly good Texas team. They're obviously not the Texas from last year, obviously without Logan Eggleston and Zoe Fleck, but they still have Emma Halter, Asia O'Neal, Molly Phillips, who I think has kind of got to step up, in my opinion. But I'm not yanking on her, and I'm not riding her or ragging on her. I'm just saying that if she steps up, Texas is a much better team. Then you also got Maddie Skinner. I got the two Skinner girls mixed up. Maddie Skinner. You also got Jenna Wenas. And then the new setter. It's not Bella Bergmark. Bella Bergmark is the middle for what's their face for Texas, but they do have the freshman setter, as unfortunately Kaina Torres isn't starting, which is not fun is not fun times, but it is what it is, honestly. But for Texas, I will just say this. I think they do have a good shot at this. Here's the thing. They get the luxury of playing BYU on their home floor. And my thing is this. BYU is obviously capable of winning at Smith Fieldhouse. Now, can they win on the road? And Ella Swindle is the freshman setter for Texas. My thing is, I don't know if BYU can win on the road. They obviously did not win on the road against Washington State. But this is going to take BYU out of its comfort zone. I think Texas could win, but do not count out BYU. I'm saying Texas is going to win like they're favored, but but here's my thing. Texas is still the Big 12 champions, and they are still the class of the Big 12. But with the wins that BYU had over Baylor, they swept Baylor last Saturday, I forgot to mention, and they swept Houston as well. Now, let's see them win on the road. If they can win these two matches on the road, BYU is legit. I really think BYU is the real deal, and they definitely belong in the Big 12. And then if Texas managed to win these two matches, then Texas is back. Kinda. All right, jumping over to Friday's matches. We got a lot of good Friday matches. Got number 2 Nebraska and number 17 Purdue. While I did say that Nebraska and Wisconsin are on a crash course to face one another, I did forget that Nebraska still has to face Purdue, and they also have to face Penn State, which still can be roadblocks. But here's my thing. As long as Nebraska takes care of business and they watch out for Chloe Chicoine as well as Eva Hudson, I really think that Nebraska should not have too many problems. They have so much talent on that team. The Huskers are just stacked across the board, and some of their talent is so young. So I think for Nebraska, they shouldn't have too many problems with Purdue. Now, unless Eva Hudson goes off and Chloe Chicoine goes off and has like 10 service aces and like a bunch of blocks, I think Purdue doesn't really stand too much of a chance. I think Purdue will battle, but I ultimately think Nebraska will come out with the win. I'm not trying to say that Purdue sucks. I just think Nebraska's on a whole other level. Also on Friday, we have number 25 Arizona State at number 4 Stanford. All right. So Arizona State is undefeated as they face Stanford. Here's my thing. Arizona State, you are definitely good. I'll give you that much. But can you win on the road against a true quality opponent in Stanford? I mean, Stanford took on previously undefeated Cal last week, and they swept them. So you're going to have to bring your A game if you want to beat the Cardinal ASU. And like I said, and like I've mentioned in the past, Stanford is stacked across the board. Even when Kendall Kipp is not on her A game, you have Aaliyah Rubin and Katie Baird to basically help carry the load. And that's what makes Stanford so unique. And Cammie Minor is also a phenomenal setter. I think she's one of the best setters in the nation, and I think she's got a bright future ahead of her if she wants to play pro, which I'm sure she will. And she's also the daughter of Harold Minor, if you don't know that already. Staying in the Pac-12, we have Washington at number 6 Oregon, which I think can be a sneaky good matchup. And here's the thing for Oregon. Oregon plays Washington State on Sunday. This Washington matchup could be a trap game for the Ducks. Now, I'm certain Oregon's not going to fly right into that trap. I'm certain Oregon is going to have a good match. They should be able to win this one on paper. You just don't want to underestimate the Huskies. I think Washington has a good team this season. I think they don't have the greatest team like they've had in the past, but I really think that Washington has a formidable team. I don't think they're a doormat to anyone except for like Stanford, Washington State, and maybe Oregon. But Oregon just cannot underestimate Washington. If they're thinking they're going to roll into the Matthew Knight Arena and basically think they're going to get an easy 3-0 sweep out of it, they're dead wrong. So Oregon just has to cross its T's, dot its I's, mind its P's and Q's and whatnot, and basically show why they're the number 6 team in the nation. And then for Washington, if they want to pull off a quality win, this is probably the week to do so. And the match to do so. So, time will tell. Jumping over to the Big 12, we have number 20 Houston at number 19 Kansas. Well, for Kansas, they're now getting a taste of the true Big 12 as they're facing Houston. Which Houston is still a newcomer to the conference, but I will say this. Houston is still a very good team. They've got a very good libero. They've got some good hitters on their team. Primarily, they've got, and I don't think I mentioned this, and this was featured on the ESPN broadcast. They got some good transfers from the transfer portal. They got one girl from Texas Tech, and then a few other players from across the board, which are talented. So I'm just going to say this for Houston. They may have a shot against Kansas. Kansas really cannot underestimate Houston. And the good thing is that they'll be at home. The bad thing is that they're now starting to get a taste of the true Big 12. And if they underestimate anyone in that conference, they're as good as cooked. But it's still going to be a great matchup. Jumping over to the SEC, we have a sneaky good matchup right here. Number 22 Kentucky at Georgia. So if Georgia nearly pulled off an upset against Florida, they may have a shot against Kentucky. If Kentucky isn't at full strength, so I've heard, they may struggle against the Bulldogs, because the Bulldogs do have that dog in them. And I hate to say this, but Kentucky has kind of been a little underwhelming this season. And yes, it's probably because they aren't at full strength, but I will say this, they really got to step it up. Otherwise, if they finish below 500, they're done. Because when you finish below 500, you're not making no NCAA tournament. Yes, they've got a good strength of schedule, but that can only take them as far. That can only take them so far. So for Kentucky, they just cannot underestimate Georgia. Because remember, Georgia upset Georgia Tech, which was huge for that team. So if people are thinking that Georgia is going to be a pushover for Kentucky, that they're probably not watching. They're not paying attention to Georgia all that much. And then closing out Friday's notable matchups, we have another sneaky good matchup, and I hate to sound biased with this, but it's Hawaii at Long Beach State. Now, it's going to be televised on ESPNU, and unfortunately, I can't make this matchup. I have my second job that I have to do. I have to cover high school football, but and I'm also doing color commentary for high school, for my local high school and whatnot. So unfortunately, I can't cover this matchup, but I will be at Thursday's matchup between Long Beach State and UC San Diego at the Pyramid. So see you there. Anyway, so as for Hawaii, Long Beach State, all right. Long-time rivalry between these two teams. These two have had some pretty good notable matches. But Hawaii has gotten the better of the Beach more often than not, and as of late. If Long Beach really wants to solidify themselves as a legit team in the Big West Conference, and they want to get closer and closer to convincing the committee they deserve at least an at-large spot, they got to beat Hawaii. They got to also beat Santa Barbara, which they have also struggled to beat Santa Barbara on the road. So that's for later, though. So for Long Beach State, they really have to step it up. And Hawaii is so close to getting ranked. They're like 33 when it comes to being ranked in the AVCA coaches polls. They're knocking on the door, and so is Santa Barbara. But unfortunately for Hawaii, they don't have any ranked-on-ranked matches going forward unless Santa Barbara jumps in the rankings as well as they do. But for Hawaii, here's my thing. If they're thinking they're going to be strolling on into the Pyramid, thinking, oh, this is going to be a snap, this is going to be easy, it won't be. Yes, Hawaii is stacked. Yes, they've had a challenging non-conference schedule, but Long Beach has kind of had a challenging non-conference schedule as well. They've played Nebraska. They've played a talented and improved UCLA team. They played Texas. They played a talented LMU team. They played Washington. They played Indiana, which I think Indiana might be a sneaky good team in that Big Ten conference. Call me crazy. They also played Omaha, which is more often than not good in the Summit League. They also played New Mexico, which I think could do good not New Mexico. New Mexico State. My apologies. And then Alabama State always does good in its conference. And then Arizona nearly took Washington State to 5. So, and then Hawaii, they've had some ups and downs as well. They have a win over Florida State. They have a loss to TCU, loss to Oregon, win over Northwestern and San Diego. So, and then a win over USC, a win over Pepperdine, a loss against Liberty, and they lost to UCLA. So they haven't really had the most cupcakes and rainbows and unicorn schedule out there, but both these teams are going to be proving who has had the most toughest non-conference schedule and who's benefited from their tough non-conference schedule. So time will tell. Then Saturday, we have Big Ten action between number 15 Penn State and number 13 Minnesota. This is going to be a good matchup right here. I really think that the Nittany Lions can upset the Golden Gophers. Unless Taylor Lanphier goes off and then Kylie Murr just digs everything that Penn State throws at them, I just think Penn State has a good shot. I just really think they have more firepower than the Golden Gophers. Yes, Penn State is ranked below Minnesota, but I will also say this. They just got so much better in terms of the offseason. And I think on paper, Penn State is better than Minnesota. But this is why you play the games. I mean, everyone thought that Penn State was better than Florida. Florida beat them. And then everyone and their mamas thought that Penn State was better than Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech beat them. So it's not a matter of if Penn State is better than the other team on paper now. It's a matter of if Penn State is actually going to legit go onto that court and actually show that they are a good team under Katie Schumacher-Cawley. And then Keegan Cook is obviously a fantastic coach, taking over in his first year, coming from Washington. And then I also failed to mention on Saturday that Houston and Kansas are also facing one another. But staying in the Big 12, we have number 18 Baylor at Iowa State, which is a sneaky good matchup. Now, here's my thing for Iowa State. They got booted out of the top 25, but they didn't lose last week. They actually won both their matches against West Virginia. I think it's because ASU is undefeated and they have a quality win over Washington, which, unfortunately for Iowa State, they lost to UC Santa Barbara. That's going to probably boot them out of the top 25. Now, Iowa State can get back into that top 25 if they beat Baylor. But I will say this. I'll say this about Iowa State. They have a shot because if you remember last year, number 1 Texas went to Iowa State and lost in 5. And Baylor's not the same team as they have been in the past with Yassiana Presley and Avery Skinner. No. And Cara McGee. I really think that Iowa State has a good matchup, and they have a good chance at winning this. It's a sneaky good matchup, but I think it's a matchup that Iowa State can definitely win. Cyclone fans, get excited and show up and show out for your team. Then Sunday, we have Georgia at Auburn, which I think is sneaky good, just because I mentioned this already for Kentucky, Georgia, but if there's ever a time for Georgia to show that it has more bark than bite, no pun intended, I think this is the week. Because you've got two teams that, they're both winnable. Kentucky is down, and if they're not healthy, then Georgia can definitely win that. And then Auburn, even though they pushed Florida to 5, you got to remember, their setter was only in her first full week at the starting setter position. So for Auburn, they may have a little bit of a sneaky tough time against Georgia. The good thing is for the Tigers is that they get to play Georgia at Auburn. For Georgia, like I said, if they want to prove themselves as a ranked team and a really good team in the SEC, this is the week to do so. They have to beat the likes of Kentucky and Auburn. Also, Baylor and Iowa State are playing on Sunday. I keep forgetting that the duplicate matchups are on certain days as well. But now we got to get into my match of the week. Number 7, Washington State at number 6, Oregon. That's my match of the week, in my opinion. I guess you could also make the argument for BYU, Texas, but I think Washington State, Oregon is a very good matchup. Washington State was chosen to finish second in the Pac-12. I feel Oregon might be disrespected by that. But let me just tell you, Washington State is so darn stacked across the board. They returned practically everybody. I mean, Oregon does have a lot of good players as well, and they got better in terms of the transfer portal, and they have Mimi Collier. The big question is, can they win at home against Washington State? They did lose to Minnesota early in the season, but that's the only blip on their radar. Washington State's only blip on their radar was to Louisville, which there's no shame in losing to, because their only loss was to Stanford. But if Washington State wants to prove itself as a top-tier team, they got to prove itself against Oregon. And then if Oregon wants to prove all the Pac-12 heretics wrong, who basically said that Washington State is going to finish second above Oregon and behind Stanford, Oregon's got to prove themselves in this matchup. Again, Oregon has the luxury of being at home because they're playing at Matthew Knight Arena, and that is a huge, huge, huge plus for the Ducks. But honestly, do not count out Washington State. Washington State has so much talent, like Magda, I hope I'm pronouncing her last name correct, Jelarova, or Helarova. If I'm mispronouncing it, I'm sorry, but she's just one of the returning talented players for Washington State. Pia Timmer is another. So I will say this, do not count out Washington State. And I keep on telling y'all, buy your stock on Washington State. Do not count out the Cougars. And here's the thing, if they win the Pac-12, this could boost their stock on other conferences wanting to get them. Heck, maybe they could be joining, maybe the Mountain West. I don't know. Or maybe they could be going to another Power 5 conference as well. I don't know. It's food for thought, but I'll say this for Washington State. I really like their head coach, Jen Greeny, and Burdette Greeny is also a great story. I hope he kicked cancer's butt to the curb and back to the curb and back to the curb. Regardless, I just like the Greenies of Washington State, and they're a very sneaky good team to root for, just because they're talent. They've got talent across the board, and they've climbed their way from the depths of the unknown over to big time land. I know big time land isn't really a word, but I'll also say that they are big time. Anyway, but that is going to do it for all the matches to watch for in Week 6. Before we head on out, this Saturday is actually going to mark the first ever time that Set Point went live. Yes, September 30th is when Set Point first went live. There is not going to be a show on Saturday. I was thinking of doing a show on Saturday, but you, the fans, voted to have a show, the 4-year anniversary special of Set Point, on Monday, October 2nd, which is next Monday. So do not think I will be going live. And I'm hoping I can get a guest on. I really hope I can get a guest on for next week's episode of Set Point. I think it would be awesome to have a guest, whether it's like big time in the NCAA women's volleyball world, or whether it's in like the JUCOs like I did last year when I had the Chafee women's volleyball coach. But either way, I'm hoping we can make the 4-year anniversary special show a fun show. And again, I want to thank I'll save my thank yous for next week, but thank you to everyone for all of your support. But that's going to do it for this week's show of Set Point. It's high time we drop the beat, because I'm about to dip like a banana in chocolate. You feel me? Thank you everyone for tuning in to Set Point. I really do appreciate everybody tuning in. If you listen live, I appreciate you. If you listen on the playback, I appreciate you. If you listen at work, I appreciate you. If you listen at any time, any place, anywhere, I appreciate you. Shout out to the live chat room, Larry B. Don't worry, Larry, I did not forget about you. He said volley, oi, oi, oi. Oh, no. You You really had to go there. I'm kidding. That's pretty clever of you. And then Mike Pat also was in the chat room. He said, have a great show, sir. Thank you. I appreciate you, and hopefully Florida State can do damage. Hopefully. But that is going to do it for this week's episode of Set Point. Definitely follow Set Point on Instagram at set_point IESR, and follow it on X at set_point IE. And you can follow me, Teran Rodriguez, on Twitter or X at Teran Rodriguez 1 if you want to. You don't have to, just because I don't post all things volleyball. I sometimes post other miscellaneous stuff. But I digress. I will be back this Friday for the SoCal Supreme Sports Show, and I will most likely be at Thursday's game between Long Beach State and UC San Diego, just because I want to get an NCAA women's volleyball match in this week. Until then, have yourself a great rest of the week. Enjoy the volleyball action, and I will see you Friday for the SoCal Supreme Sports Show and Thursday at Long Beach State. Peace!